Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. I never imagined that a chance encounter would cause me to re-experience that heartbreaking pain. As I pushed open the door of the familiar restaurant, my eyes swept unobtrusively over a table in the corner. In that moment, my heart stopped suddenly. My ex-wife, Olivia, was talking to a slightly overweight middle-aged man. Her face glowed with happiness, a look we never saw in the last years of our marriage. The man's every move revealed wealth, even though the signs of age and good food had crept up his figure. I'm Ethan, and this is a past I don't want to look back on. Standing in the doorway of the restaurant, the memories of 3 years ago came flooding back like a tidal wave. The kind of pain that seems like it was just yesterday. I should have gone to my client appointment, but it was as if my feet were nailed in place. I couldn't take my eyes off Olivia, mixed emotions tumbling inside me. It all started with that supposedly ordinary night. That day, I was supposed to be traveling to Albany on business and planned to spend the night there. However, just an hour after I hit the road, the client called out of the blue. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I've had a bit of a situation on my end. I'm afraid today's meeting will have to be canceled." The client apologized. I politely expressed my understanding and suggested another appointment for another day. After hanging up the phone, I suddenly realized that I would have to drive an extra 2 hours to get home. Despite some exhaustion, I decided to return. Might be able to surprise Olivia, I think. On the drive back, I was filled with the warmth of home. However, as I turned onto the street where we live, an inexplicable uneasiness suddenly came over me. There were 3 strange cars parked in front of my house. Olivia occasionally invites friends over for small get-togethers while I'm traveling, but for some reason, this felt a little different. I parked my car on the street and walked gingerly into the house. The living room was silent, but there was a strange scent in the air. Just then I noticed 4 sets of clothes scattered on the floor. My heart began to beat faster as a horrible suspicion took shape in my mind. I held my breath as I carefully climbed the stairs. Every step feels like a step towards the abyss. Suddenly, I heard Olivia's voice, and it wasn't my familiar tone. It was a moan filled with desire. My hands were trembling, but I gathered my courage and gently pushed open the bedroom door. At that moment, my world fell apart. My wife, Olivia, whom I love dearly, is flipping off 3 men in our bedroom. I recognized one of the men as Olivia's boss, Marcus Davis. They desecrated our marriage and the vows we had made with impunity. I wanted to storm in. I wanted to scream and question. I wanted to kick those men out of my home. But I didn't. Instead, I quietly retreated, filled with anger, pain, and a sense of betrayal. I forced myself to calm down. I needed proof. I needed to make them pay. I found my digital camcorder with the battery still charged and an old vacation tape in it. I adjusted the settings to make sure there was enough room to record new content. Then I made one of the toughest decisions of my life. I went back to the bedroom door, set up my video camera, and began recording evidence of Olivia's betrayal of me. Those 5 to 10 short minutes seemed like an eternity to me. Every second was like a sharp blade, stabbing deep into my heart. I look at Olivia's face and listen to her voice, yet she feels like a complete stranger. When I couldn't take it anymore, I quietly grabbed the camera and went back downstairs. My mind went blank and my body seemed to be out of control. I was sitting on the couch in the living room, and it felt like the whole world was spinning. I knew that from this moment on, my life would never be the same again. I stared at the camera that recorded the evidence of the breakdown of my marriage. I'm conflicted. Part of me wants to rush in and confront Olivia immediately, and the other part of me hopes this is just a bad dream. But I knew I had to face this harsh reality. A strange calmness enveloped me as I came down the stairs with the camera. I knew what I was going to do next, and each step seemed to have been rehearsed in my head 1,000 times already. I started by carefully searching the living room and quickly found the men's car keys and wallets. I gathered them all up and carefully placed them in my briefcase. Then I quietly slipped out the door and gingerly walked over to each car and deflated all of their tires. I didn't even spare Olivia's car. After all, she was one of the main characters in this betrayal. I picked up my cell phone, took a deep breath, and dialed her number. The bell rang upstairs and I heard someone's panicked footsteps. "Hey, honey, how's Albany?" Olivia's voice was a little breathy, obviously trying to hide something. I held back my inner rage and acted as if nothing had happened. "The client canceled and I'm on my way home. Want to have dinner with you? I'll be home in half an hour." "Oh, really? That's great." Olivia's voice suddenly became flustered. I I have to clean up my room, you know. I'm always messing things up." "Don't worry, honey." I said, "I love you." "I love you too." She replied hastily, then hung up hastily. I stood at the top of the stairs, listening to the sounds of panic coming from upstairs. Within moments, four disheveled figures began to make their way downstairs. I quietly ducked aside and watched as they hurriedly dressed and headed for the door. At that moment, I burst out, slammed the front door, and quickly locked it. Olivia and the three men were taken aback and froze in place. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Olivia stammered, her face pale. Instead of answering her, I took out my cell phone and dialed 911. "Hello, I'd like to call the police. Someone broke into my home, and I suspect they wanted to hurt my wife." The three men began to panic as they rushed to the door and tried to leave, only to find that it was locked. Olivia, on the other hand, stood still, fear and shame written all over her face. 10 minutes later, the police arrived on the scene. They inquired about the situation and I told them I had come home early and found these strange men in my house. The police turned to Olivia and asked if she had been harmed. Olivia lowered her head, her voice almost inaudible. "No, I'm not hurt. These people, I invited them. We volunteered." The cop looked at me, then at Olivia and the three men, and seemed to understand something. They told me that since it was consensual, they could not bring charges against the men. I nodded, then turned to Olivia, my voice cold as ice. "Please call yourself a cab. As of tonight, you are not allowed to step foot in this house again." As the taillights of the police car disappeared around the corner, I closed the door and cut myself off from the outside world. The silence in the room seemed like it could consume a person, and I took a deep breath, forcing myself to face the painful truth of what was to come. I walked slowly up the stairs, each step stinging as if I were stepping on broken glass. The moment I pushed open the bedroom door, a pungent scent of perfume hit me. It was Olivia's favorite perfume, my birthday gift to her. At the moment, this flavor that used to make my heart sing makes me gag. My eyes swept over the messy bed, the crumpled sheets still bearing traces of their pleasures. With a sudden, uncontrollable fire, I rushed forward and overturned the mattress. The mattress hit the floor with a thud, stirring up a cloud of dust. I rampaged around the room like a madman, ripping all the clothes out of the closet, drawers being roughly pulled open and spilling their contents all over the floor. I grabbed the lamp on the nightstand and slammed it against the wall so hard that shards of glass flew everywhere. In the midst of this frenzy of destruction, I suddenly remembered the toolbox in the garage. I rushed downstairs and practically stumbled to the garage, grabbing a sledgehammer and a screwdriver. Back in the bedroom, I began to disassemble our marriage bed. Every knock seemed to be pounding on my heart, and every sound of a screw coming loose felt like it was tearing at my soul. I dismantled the bed frame and carried it piece by piece to the front yard. Neighbors poked their heads in and looked at me with surprise and sympathy. I knew I must look like a mess at the moment, but I couldn't care less. I threw all the pieces of the mattress and bed frame on the lawn where they lay, like my broken marriage. Back inside, my eyes fall on Olivia's cell phone. I picked it up, my fingers trembling as I typed in the code. It was our wedding anniversary. The irony is that she betrayed me, and yet she still uses that date as her password. The phone unlocked and a new world unfolded before my eyes. Countless flirty texts, sickeningly intimate photos, and even a few restricted videos. My stomach began to churn, my throat tightened, and I almost vomited. I forced myself to look at the messages one by one. Each one was like a sharp blade, piercing deep into my heart. I realized that Olivia had not only betrayed me, but that this betrayal had been going on for a long time. Her boss, Marcus, is just one of many lovers. While going through the harrowing evidence, I suddenly remembered the guest room closet. Olivia had insisted on keeping that old closet, saying it was a keepsake. Now that I think about it, maybe there are more secrets hidden inside. I walked into the guest room, opened the closet, and began to move out the contents piece by piece. When I moved to the last drawer, I realized it was somewhat stuck. I pulled hard, and with a click, the drawer finally opened, but I also heard something break. I carefully examined the bottom of the drawer and found a hidden secret compartment. Inside lay 7 to 8 DVDs without any labels. My heart raced and my palms began to sweat. I realized that these DVDs could revolutionize everything. I walked to the living room and put the first DVD into the player. The moment the footage began to play, I felt like my world had completely collapsed. That's an intimate video of Olivia and her tennis coach Tony in the tennis club locker room. I mechanically replaced it with a second and third DVD, each documenting scenes of Olivia's betrayal with a different man. That last DVD almost killed me. It was Olivia's wild party at the office with her boss, Marcus, and Bill, a company executive. I recognized the plush conference room that I'd once seen when I'd picked Olivia up from work. I sat paralyzed on the couch, feeling all the strength drain from my body. Tears flowed uncontrollably, and I didn't even have the strength to wipe them away. I stared at the TV screen, watching the woman I used to love so much in someone else's arms, and all that was left in my heart was desolation. Just then, my cell phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Honey, I'm worried about you. Are you all right? Do you need me to come with you?" Oh. I stared at the message, my insides churning with mixed emotions. Olivia has the nerve to care about me? Or is this just another one of her tricks? My finger hangs over the reply button, debating how to respond. Perhaps this nightmare is far from over. Early morning sunlight poured in through a gap in the curtains, and I opened my tired eyes to find myself curled up on the couch. I forced myself to stand and stumbled toward the bathroom. I looked haggard in the mirror, my eyes bloodshot, stubble sprouting, and I looked like I'd aged 10 years. I shuffled mechanically and then headed to the kitchen. The coffee machine hummed, and the aroma of strong coffee filled the room. I stared at the dark liquid in my glass and pondered what to do next. Suddenly, a name flashed through my mind: Ted Worth. Ted has been a good friend of mine for many years and is an accomplished attorney. I picked up my cell phone, took a deep breath, and dialed his number. "Tedworth Law Firm. This is Mary. How may I help you?" Came the familiar voice of Mary, the secretary. "Mary, it's Ethan. I need to see Ted immediately. It's urgent." My voice trembled a little. Mary seemed to sense something was wrong with me. "Ethan, Ted was in court all day today." "But wait, let me see. If you come over now, he might have half an hour to see you when court adjourns at noon." "Thank you, Mary. I'll be right there." After hanging up, I hurriedly cleaned up. I put Olivia's cell phone, those DVDs, and the videos I recorded in a large envelope. Before I left the house, I hesitated and grabbed Olivia's laptop. On the drive to Ted's office, my thoughts kept jumping between images from last night and the upcoming conversation. How am I going to explain all this to Ted? What will he think of me? More importantly, how do I get justice for myself? Mary looked at me in surprise as I pushed open the door to Ted's office. "Jesus, Ethan, you look like shit. What happened?" I barely managed a bitter smile. "Mary, trust me, you don't want to know. Is Ted there?" Just then Ted's voice came from the inner room. "Ethan, come in." I walked into Ted's office and saw him organizing a pile of papers. He looked up at me and immediately dropped what he was doing. "Jesus, Ethan, you look like you've been through a war. What the hell happened?" I took a deep breath, then told everything that happened last night in full. From me coming home early, to finding out about Olivia's betrayal, to how I gathered evidence. Ted listened quietly, only occasionally frowning or nodding. When I finished, I handed him the envelope full of evidence. Ted carefully opened the envelope and began to peruse the contents. When he saw those photos and videos, I saw his expression change from shock to anger. "Ethan, I'm sorry you're going through this," Ted finally said, sympathy and anger in his voice. "But you did the right thing, gathering all this evidence. This will be very useful in the ensuing legal proceedings." I nodded and then said the question I'd been wanting to ask. Ted, what do I do? I want her to pay. I want justice. Ted ponders for a moment, then says, first, we need to double-check Olivia's cell phone. You said you brought it, didn't you? I nod and take Olivia's cell phone out of the envelope and hand it to him. Ted opens his cell phone and begins to take a quick look inside. Suddenly, he stopped, a complicated expression on his face. Look here, Ethan. These text messages? God, it's a gold mine of evidence, Ted said, pointing to the screen. I went over to read it and realized it was a series of text message exchanges between Olivia and her coworkers, clients, and even her BFF, Sarah. Each message was like a sharp knife that stabbed me in the heart. But one conversation in particular caught my attention. That was Sarah asking Olivia why she hadn't left me yet, inquiring what her ideal future partner would look like. Olivia's reply made me feel a wave of nausea. Sarah, I lost my feelings for him a long time ago. Nathan is loyal but stupid. I'm afraid he'll soon find out about my secret life. He wasn't exactly a fool, but love blinded him. He started to put on weight lately, and that beer belly is a real turnoff. I also hate his beard and mustache. It makes him look kind of gross. I used to love him dearly, but the excitement of recent years was too tantalizing to give up. I couldn't continue reading and had to hold on to the table to stay on my feet. Ted turned off his cell phone and turned to me. Ethan, I know this is painful, but the evidence is very much in our favor. Now, let's talk about what's next. Just as Ted was about to explain our legal strategy in detail, his office phone suddenly rang. Ted picked up the phone and listened for a few seconds before his face turned serious. It's Bill Evans, the CEO of Olivia wants to meet with us, Ted said, hanging up and telling me, looks like things are starting to get interesting. I nodded, my heart filled with mixed emotions. I knew that from this moment on, my life would be turned upside down again. But this time, I decided to take control of my own destiny. Ted, I said, taking a deep breath, what are we going to do about Bill Evans? Ted gave a knowing smile. Don't worry, Ethan. We have enough chips on our hands. Let's see what Bill Evans really wants, and then we'll make them pay. I looked at Ted's confident expression and suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this is the beginning of justice to come. The air in Ted's office seemed to freeze. We are awaiting the arrival of Bill Evans, a name that once existed only in the world of Olivia's work and is now about to become a major player in my life. Remember, Ethan, Ted whispered, whatever happens, stay calm. Let me lead the conversation. I nodded, trying to calm my inner turmoil. Just then, Mary's voice came over the intercom. Ted, Mr. Bill Evans is here. Invite him in, Mary, Ted replied, then gave me a wink. The door opened and a tall, middle-aged man in a suit walked in. His pace was steady and his face was smiling, but I could tell by his slightly taut jaw that he was insecure. Tedworth, Bill extended his hand. It's nice to finally meet. Ted stood up and shook his hand. Bill Evans, welcome. This is my client, Ethan Thompson. Bill's eyes turned to me. His smile stiffens for a split second, but quickly returns to its natural state. Ethan, he nodded in greeting, I'm sorry for your current situation. I fought back the anger inside me and reluctantly nodded. Ted gestured for Bill to sit down and then got right to the point. Bill, I assume you're here to discuss Olivia? Bill took a deep breath. Yes. I'm hoping we can find a solution that works for everyone. Ted leaned back in his chair, his eyes sharp. I'm curious as to what you mean by good for everyone. After all, my client just found out that his wife is having inappropriate relationships with multiple men, including employees of your company. Bill's face turned pale. I understand the seriousness of the situation, but, Mr. Worth, we must consider the bigger picture. Olivia is a great asset to our company and her work is vital to our business. Is Olivia just an asset to them? I was about to say something, but Ted gently touched my arm, signaling me to stay calm. I see, Ted said slowly. So, you're here to offer some compensation in exchange for our understanding and cooperation? Bill nodded. Yes, we are willing to offer a sizable settlement. Of course, this will require a signed non-disclosure agreement. Ted smiled, a cold smile I'd never seen before. Bill, I think you may not realize how serious this is. He pulled out a flash drive and inserted it into his computer. Let me show you something. Several video clips appeared on the computer screen. Bill's face instantly turned pale. It was intimate footage of Olivia in the corporate office with various men, including Bill himself. It's illegal. Bill stammered. You can't. Oh, of course we can, Ted interrupted. These videos are taken in public places. There's no right to privacy. What's more, it was your employees themselves who recorded and distributed these videos. Bill slumped in his chair, a fine bead of sweat breaking out on his forehead. What do you want? He asked weakly. Ted turned off the video and turned to me. Ethan, what do you think? I take a deep breath and look Bill straight in the eye. I want Olivia to lose her job. I want your company to pay for this behavior. I want justice. Ted nodded. You heard me, Bill. We want more than money. We want justice. We hold your company responsible. We want Olivia and everyone involved fired. Bill looks like he's been punched hard. This will destroy our company. Then, Ted said coldly, perhaps you should be more careful in hiring and managing your employees. Over the next 2 hours, we discussed in detail the amount of compensation and other conditions. Ultimately, Bill agreed to pay $2.8 million in damages, fire Olivia and the other employees involved, and conduct comprehensive ethics training within the company. When Bill left, I felt a rush of mixed emotions: satisfaction, anger, sadness, and a touch of relief. Good job, Ethan, Ted patted me on the shoulder. But our work isn't over yet. We worked nonstop for the next few days. Ted contacted Tony, Olivia's tennis coach, as well as 2 other men who were at my house that night. They all panicked and were desperate to get out of this mess. Eventually, they each agreed to pay $500,000 in damages in exchange for our silence. But the most surprising twist was about tennis club owner Harry Riel. When Ted contacted him, Harry surprisingly rejected all offers of reconciliation, insisting that it was a private matter between adults. Looks like we need to put a little pressure on Mr. Harry, Ted said thoughtfully. Ethan, do you remember the video taken in the club locker room the other night? I nodded. That video was one of the sources of my nightmares. Okay, Ted said with a wry smile. I have an idea. The next day, we went to the Ace Tennis Club. Harry Riel met us in his plush office, his manner haughty and dismissive. Look, said Harry impatiently, I've already said it's none of my business. I won't pay a dime. Ted calmly pulled out his laptop. Harry, before you make a final decision, I suggest you take a look at this. He played the video from that night. Harry's face went from smug to horrified. The video clearly shows that not only did he know about these things, he was personally involved. It's illegal. Harry stammered. You can't. Oh, we can't what? Ted interrupted. More importantly, Harry, how do you think your members will react when they find out you've installed cameras in the locker room? Harry slumped in his chair, his face pale. What do you want? Ted turned off the video. $500,000 in damages and your resignation from all positions at the club. Otherwise, we'll send this video to every club member, every local media outlet, and your family. Harry Riel eventually agreed to all conditions. As we left the club, I felt a strange sense of relief. How does it feel? Ted asked. I took a deep breath. Honestly, I don't know. Should I be happy? Ted tapped me on the shoulder. Ethan, remember, this isn't about pleasure. It's about justice. You stood up to those who hurt you and made them pay. It takes courage. I nodded, feeling as if some of the emptiness inside me had been filled. The divorce proceedings went quickly. With Ted's help, I gained ownership of all the property. As Olivia once said in a text message, she got a house and a car, but no alimony. But I'm not satisfied with that. I want Olivia to really feel the pain of betrayal, like she did to me. At Ted's suggestion, I began a series of carefully planned acts of revenge. First, I contacted Olivia's parents and close friends and sent them evidence of her infidelity and those sickening videos. I made sure they knew that the perfect daughter they had in mind was actually a betrayer and a liar. This move has completely shattered Olivia's image among her family and circle of friends. Secondly, I anonymously spoke to her community her behavior. Soon Olivia finds herself isolated in her social circle, with former friends distancing themselves from her. Then I used my connections in the business world to make sure Olivia had trouble finding a new job locally. Whenever she was on the verge of getting a new job, I would have someone anonymously report her misconduct, causing her to lose her job offer several times. Eventually, I created an anonymous account on social media and made regular suggestive posts that kept Olivia living in fear of being exposed. Although I never actually publicized those videos, this constant psychological pressure was giving her sleepless nights. I only saw Olivia twice in court. I called her a slut every time, which brought tears to her eyes. I saw that her once confident appearance was gone, replaced by a haggard, fearful woman. I've often pondered why she's crying now and not when she betrayed me. Olivia stopped me on the street one day and pleaded with me to stop this. She said she had lost everything and couldn't continue with the stress. I felt a twinge of mixed emotions as I watched her tear up. I told her that this was the price of betrayal and turned away. Now, 3 years later, when I see Olivia and the middle-aged man at the diner, it's no longer pain I feel, but a strange calm. I knew that I had come out of that horrible night and had regained control of my life. But at the same time, I realized this was an opportunity to make Olivia pay again. I slowly walked towards Olivia's table and see the smile on her face fade away, replaced by horror and shame. "It's been a long time, slut," I said calmly. "Looks like you found the rich man of your dreams." Olivia's male companion stood up. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but I suggest you leave." I smiled. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Ethan, Olivia's ex-husband. You know, the poor bastard she betrayed." The man's face changed as he looked at Olivia in confusion. I continued, "I just wanted to ask you a few questions. Is Sarah still hosting her parties on Tuesdays and Thursdays?" The man frowned and said, "Sarah helps sell decorations on Mondays and Wednesdays. Something seems to be wrong with your memory." "Ah, yeah." I feigned surprise. "So, is Olivia still taking tennis lessons on Saturdays?" "Olivia plays tennis on Sundays," the man said, looking even more confused now. "Why are you asking these questions?" I gave a meaningful smile. "One last question. Have you checked under the bottom drawer of your bedroom closet?" The man's face suddenly turned pale. "What? Why would I do that?" I shrugged. "Oh, no particular reason. Just a suggestion." Then I turned to Olivia. "You know, I found some really interesting DVDs there once. Maybe your new boyfriend will be interested in what's in there, too." Olivia's face instantly turned pale and she began to tremble. I continued, "You see, my dear ex-wife has an interesting hobby. She likes to record herself with different men, intimate videos. I'm sure you'll see a lot of familiar faces on those DVDs, including her bosses, co-workers, and even tennis coaches." The man looks at Olivia in shock. "Is this true?" Olivia starts to sob. "No, it's not what you think." I sneered. "Oh, believe me, it's much worse than you think. If you want to know the truth, check that drawer. Be careful though, what's inside might surprise you." I turned to leave, but then stopped and said, "Oh yeah, Olivia, I suggest you choose your more carefully in the future partner. You never know who's going to be the next Ethan." With that, I turned and left, leaving a table of shocked and confused people. As I walked out of the restaurant, I took a deep breath of fresh air and felt a freedom I had never felt before. I know that my behavior was probably too cruel, but I couldn't help myself. The sense of injustice of seeing Olivia happy and joyful again, when I had suffered so much, was too much for me to let go of. Nonetheless, as I walked to my car, I began to wonder if this kind of retaliation could really bring inner peace. As I started the car and drove in the direction of home, I realized that maybe it was time to really let go of the past and start a new chapter. This revenge gave me a certain amount of satisfaction, but I also realized that the real healing came from my own growth and change. I learned to value myself and stop basing my self-worth on the judgment of others. As I pulled into the driveway of my home, I saw that the porch light was still on. I know that no matter what has happened in the past, the future remains hopeful. I walked to my house with a smile on my face, ready for a new day, a new challenge, and a new opportunity. Because I know that true victory is not over others, but over my past self. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.